What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we are talking about the NCAA appealing Trinidad Chambliss decision to play the season yet again. If anybody hasn't followed the timeline, Trinidad Chambliss got denied by the NCAA for a 6 year of eligibility. Then they took it to the Mississippi Supreme Court where he was granted eligible. Like I told you guys, the NCAA was going to appeal this decision yet again. And now we're on the next stages of this case. Like I said, this is Sloppy Saturdays, a college football podcast where we are going to continue to cover this case all the way through the end of it. Now, the one thing I do want to discuss before we really hop into the details of my opinions of this case, I posted a short, I believe it was on TikTok, and it got extreme amount of hate when I said this case was not going to be done. Everybody said it's over. The NCAA has zero leverage in this case. Now that Supreme Courts are deciding eligibility, and it's in Mississippi, that Trinidad Chambliss is going to be 100% granted to play. I said this is not over yet. And you guys kind of made me almost second guess if I got all my facts correct, because I knew NCAA was going to appeal this case. What happens? We get word in the last day that the NCAA is indeed appealing this case. Now, I don't want a victory lap by any means. I really like Trinidad Chambliss. I'm a fan of Trinidad Chambliss. His whole story is great. I think his play is electrifying. I would 100% love to see him in another year for our sport and put Ole Miss in a contender yet again and have them as one of the final four teams. I just really thought this was 100% going to be a case where this was going to be appealed and NCAA was going to go further on it. Now, NCAA wants an expedited review. Why do they want an expedited review? Because they want Trinidad Chambliss to not step on the field in 2026. If this prolongs, he could play for Ole Miss majority or throughout the whole entire season if they don't get this done right now. Now, this is a very interesting case. Like I said, as much as I love Trinidad Chambliss, his play style, how electrifying he is, how I do want to see Ole Miss be a contender this year after everything that happened with Lane Kiffin. Like, I'm rooting for the scenario that Trinidad Chambliss does play in 2026, 2027 season. I think the NCAA really does have a case. Now, the NCAA's case is for a majority of reasons. One, it is an unfair advantage for a player to have a 6 year of eligibility. When we look at Trinidad Chambliss in his 5 years, he had a redshirt freshman year. He had what the biggest thing that he's claiming is a medical redshirt year, his second year, where he does have proof of documentation that he couldn't play medically. Then he played the 3 years, obviously, two at Ferris State where he played, and then one with Ole Miss. But you're looking at a 6 year of eligibility. As much as I love Trinidad Chambliss and do want him to play, NCAA has a legit case here of an unfair advantage playing into your 6th year. Not only that, I do think it is vital that the NCAA does crack down on these 6 year eligibility cases. I mean, we saw players get granted in similar cases. We saw players get denied in similar cases. But why I believe it is so important that the NCAA does crack down on this is because we are seeing with NIL players staying in college football more and more years. You're completely eliminating 2 and 3 star recruits from having the opportunity to play on some of these rosters. So the high school recruits are getting really shafted by this. And for Trinidad Chambliss' case, if they let everybody go with 6 year eligibility, now you're really having these college freshmen, unless you're a complete 5-star, really having no chance to step on the field. NCAA has said that having this is going to really hamper the legitimacy of college football, whether it comes down to Ole Miss being a contender with a 6 year quarterback, or the people in Ole Miss's room that could be starting this year, their careers are being hampered by Trinidad Chambliss starting the 6th year. Like I said, as a fan, I do really love the idea of Trinidad Chambliss staying in college football, but I do think the NCAA does have a legit case because, again, a 6 year of eligibility when it comes down to none of it being COVID years, I think is a very extreme situation. Now, what I think is going to happen, I'm kind of like 70-30. I do believe Trinidad Chambliss is going to be able to play this year just because, again, the original ruling was that he was granted the eligibility, and it's obviously in Mississippi Supreme Court, so I do think it's a little biased. I do think Trinidad Chambliss is going to be granted a 6 year eligibility and ultimately going to be playing this college football season. But I've told you guys time and time again, I do think it is an extreme risk for Trinidad Chambliss because, one, this case is not decided yet today, so it's going to prolong. And you're already seeing Trinidad Chambliss not be in the combine. He's not going to do a pro day. So if he's granted that he can play college football in 2026, I think it's going to hamper his draft stock. And like I said, if this decision comes after the NFL draft and he has to take a year off of football, I don't think this is a guy that could retain his stock into 2027. not only is 2027 projected to be a better quarterback class, but this is Trinidad Chambliss, a guy that took over college football, but does have a very small sample size in college football and isn't one of those first-round guys that everybody has been waiting on. So for Trinidad Chambliss this year, where he could go in the first 2 or 3 rounds if he would have just declared for the NFL draft and not assumed this risk, now depending on when this case is going to happen, he's either not going to be NFL draft eligible and the NFL draft is either going to already pass, or he's going to miss all these necessary things that quarterbacks are doing throughout the NFL draft, and that can make him even lower as well. I think Trinidad Chambliss is taking an extreme risk. Again, if he plays throughout the season, tears it up, do I think his NFL draft stock could be in the first 2 rounds next year? Sure, but like I said, even though there are more valuable quarterbacks being drafted next year as well, I don't think this is the right decision for him. I said this time and time again. Now, like I said, everything could go well. He could play the season, could 100% happen. But NCAA is expediting this review, and like I said, I do think they have a legitimate case for this. Now, on the Ole Miss side of things, I do believe Ole Miss has the right contingency plan in place. I have said this time and time again as well. Some of you guys have not liked this. I think Deuce Knight was the perfect add for Ole Miss. One, I do think the guy coming off his true freshman year, he did show a game where he really showed his capabilities. This guy's an elite rushing threat, and I do believe he has the ability to pass the football and make a variety of different throws. I think Deuce Knight, as a dual threat, he gave them the ability to either start this year or sit a year behind Trinidad Chambliss. Ole Miss really got themselves in a very tough situation because they could not go after every quarterback in the transfer portal. They were going to go after a guy after what Trinidad Chambliss did, and as he's trying to get this eligibility, that could really compete with Trinidad Chambliss. So that knocked off a lot of guys, but I believe they went after the true guy that was able to start for them this year and make them a contender or sit this year. Why I believe the Trinidad Chambliss case is so big for Ole Miss, not only is this guy going to be a Heisman hopeful going into the year if he doesn't grant the eligibility, he showed on the biggest stage that he's able to play. This guy's, again, a first 3-round NFL draft pick as he got drafted this year. So, again, I do think with the experience, it is vital. But not only that, for Ole Miss, I do think they're coming off a pivotal year now. Again, they went off this run with Trinidad Chambliss after Lane Kiffin left, but I do think the first year without Lane Kiffin is going to be super pivotal for their future. If they're able to show that they're going to be a contender in college football, it gives more recruits and more transfer guys the true belief in Pete Golding as a true head coach of this program. Now, I think Pete Golding is a hell of a recruiter. I think he's more than ready to be the head coach of Ole Miss, and I do think they're going to have a successful season either way. But let's be flat out honest. When you see a Deuce Knight playing one game and you see a Trinidad Chambliss playing the majority of the season, playing a huge college football playoff run as well, who do you have more faith in? It is obviously Trinidad Chambliss. So I think, again, for the program of Ole Miss, a team that lost one of the biggest head coaches in college football in their first year without him, for Trinidad Chambliss to be playing for this team, this is absolutely vital for them. And then again, I think the biggest difference as well is when you look again with the unknown coming into the spring and everything, I do think it's going to raise major questions for this program, a program that probably doesn't want much more media eyes on them based on everything they really had to go through throughout the season. So again, the effects of this are phenomenal, not only for Trinidad Chambliss, but for Ole Miss as well. But again, summing this video up, they are going to go and appeal this case yet again. It's going to happen very soon. They do want this expedited because they don't want Trinidad Chambliss to play this season. But like I said, I do think there is a more than likely chance Trinidad Chambliss does play this 2026 season, but it's not a guarantee. And I do think the NCAA is doing the right thing because, again, extending this eligibility, and we see more players than ever staying in college football because of NIL, it's really killing the high school recruits, giving the high school recruits no chance. So I do think, even though I love Trinidad Chambliss, that the NCAA does have a legitimate case, and this case is by no means over. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Drop down below, like I said, what you think about this Trinidad Chambliss case. Do you think Trinidad Chambliss is going to 100% play in college football in 2026? And do you think that the NCAA really just has, again, like I said, no leverage in this case? Or do you think the NCAA does have a legitimate stance in this case, and we could see Trinidad Chambliss get into sticky waters, like I said, with his NFL draft stock, if he was denied, all this being considered? That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Like I said, drop down below your thoughts on this case, and we are out.